Time now for Sid Sixero. This is where I get 60 seconds to talk. Start the clock, please. Here's what's on my mind this morning. Concussions. We know more about them now than ever before, but the issue lingers. I'd like you to meet Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Just last month, the Hawaiian native suffered a lower back injury that really looked like a concussion. Then a few days later, he suffered a concussion so violent, I do not feel comfortable showing it to you during this show. He missed time, but last Sunday, he came back, and just when you thought he learned some lessons, this happened. Dolphins were hosting Pittsburgh. This is Tua, number one, and he decides to dive head first in an effort to get a first down. Everyone watching held their breath. Thankfully, he's fine. And, you know, a player doing this 20, 30 years ago, I would have a lot of sympathy for because the information wasn't out there. Nowadays, there's plenty of information out there regarding concussions. Tua has to look out for Tua at some point. He should know better. He should. Donnovan Bennett of Sportsnet joining us. Donovan, the more I see stuff like this day and age, I feel uncomfortable coming out on air or on Twitter going, why isn't the league doing more? Why isn't the team doing more? Donovan, when is the discussion, why doesn't the player do more?
I think it's fair. I just don't think it's not realistic. Listen, I'm not going to get on here and be a hypocrite and say Tua needs to slide or run out of bounds, because if I was Tua, I would have done the same thing. I wasn't literally Tua, but I was a football player, and I played the same way. And you can only, if that's in you, play one way. And so certainly you could say, why don't you slide feet first, like you're a baseball player? But we've seen players get hurt doing that because it's not natural to them. So do I think he should take on a linebacker? No. But do I think he should still be aggressive and athletic? Yes. Which is why we put guardrails in place, which is why we ask the coaches and the doctors in the leagues to save players from themselves. Because when they're in that arena, you can't half step. You can't turn it on or turn it off. You run stairs and lift weights to compete at the highest level. So it is tough to dial that back. I mean, you know that with Josh Allen, Bills quarterback, who is hurdling guys, lowering the shoulder. That's just what's in him. The Kansas City Chiefs have been able to take that out of Patrick Mahomes a little bit. You know how they did it? They gave him $500 million, and they said, do you want to make it to the end of this contract? Maybe to make some smarter choices. But for a player at the beginning of his career who's still trying to prove himself, who's watching his former Alabama teammate, Mac Jones, potentially lose his job because he was unavailable, built into the culture of the sport, and it is tough to ask an athlete to compete at 100% until you're in a situation where we want you to dial it back to 75, which is why we need the league, the coaches who make money off of these players to sometimes step in. We do it in lots of areas of society. We help people save themselves, and in football it's no different.
But why? I mean, you mentioned the coaches. Why does Patrick Mahomes listen to his coaches and not put himself in that spot? Why does Lamar Jackson of Baltimore, one of the best in the game, he's also fighting for a contract last time I checked, why does he not put himself in these positions? Like, I feel like we have to really centralize the argument here, because there are plenty of players in this league who are quarterbacks who are worth a lot of money who don't do that. And if you're going to put yourself in that spot constantly, considering your injury history, why do I have to lose sleep at night? That's my big issue with this right now. If this was 30 years ago where players are being lied to, Donovan, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, they're not given any information on what's going on with their head in any sport, this is a different discussion. The level, you can't claim ignorance in 2022. That kid knows full well his injury history. He knows full well the risks at stake. He knows full well what happened twice to him last week or last month. And if he's still going to do that, why do I have to lose sleep? That's what I'm having a problem with.
Well, I think you don't have to lose sleep, quite frankly.
The world's going nuts. The world's losing their mind on the NFL, on the Dolphins, on Mike McDaniel, the head coach, on everyone except Tua Tagovailoa, and any player that still throws themselves in the middle of that in 2022. I don't think it's a fair discussion. This isn't the 1950s anymore.
But the world is losing sleep and going nuts because our intelligence is being questioned, because we see someone convulsing on a field and stumbling, and you're telling me he has a back injury. And we know what a concussion looks like. The world's not going nuts because Tua is continuing to play football, because that is his vocation, that is his love, that is his passion. My only thing is this. To play this sport, baseline is illogical. to train, to get up, to run into other grown men who are bigger, stronger than you, does not make a lot of sense, even when you're compensated at that level. Every football game is like a car crash. Who's waking up saying, I want to get into a car crash today? So to even take the field, you have to convince yourself that you are invincible. So to ask him to think I'm invincible on 70 plays, but 5, I'm going to make a smart, rash decision, is by definition somewhat illogical, which is why the other people, without that emotion, without that level of investment, have to say, I don't care what you think, we're removing you. Mike Tomlin has done it for Ryan Clark. Other coaches have done it. We're asking the Dolphins and really the league to put an infrastructure in place so that that can be the case. Because we know Tua is going to dive headfirst. He's done it his whole life.
We to be continued on this. Donovan, appreciate you again. Donovan, a really good running back in the University of Western. We don't talk about that enough. He can speak to this a bit better than I. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Always.
Good stuff.